So, what I thought we would talk about today is something that is very near and dear to my heart because I have been battling it for many years and it's actually gotten a lot better. And that is the inner critic.
Mm,
So, that's the part of us that is just kind of chattering in the background with that nagging critical voice because sometimes we want to take these opportunities that come up for us, but that little voice kind of puts us down. It's very deflating. And so there's some strategies that we can use, and we're going to talk about that throughout the call. But one strategy that I really, really love, and I love toys. So when I'm demonstrating things, I love to show them with toys. So the critical voice in our head is not really our voice. That's the funny thing. It's voices from people in the past. So maybe we had a teacher in the past that could have told us, "Oh, you're smart but not smart enough." Or maybe we had a friend who might have been a little jealous back in high school and said, "You're pretty but not pretty enough." Or maybe we had a boss that told us we were lazy. For me, it was a parent, and not to throw the parent under the bus because, oops, because we know that our parents want the best for us, but sometimes the behavior is not always the best. So for me, the reason I think that this is so near and dear to my heart, and I'll just share this story real quick, is when I was in school and I came home with a report card, I had 80s in pretty much every course except one, which was geography. I got a 60 in geography, and my father circled it in red and said, "That's not good enough." And I know that the intention behind that was, "Hey, I want you to be driven. I want you to be successful. I want you to just work really, really hard and get better grades." But as a young person, we get these things installed and we're not really able to process them. So for me, what I think ended up being recorded in my subconscious mind is, "You're smart, but not smart enough." And so that's the voice that causes me to over prepare for things like speaking engagements, client calls, even having people over for dinner, just overthinking, over preparing because of that voice. So, what can we do? Well, so all these people on the bus, I call them the itty bitty shitty committee. That is actually an official term. And so, what I like to do is slowly pick them out one by one and call them on some of the things that they're saying. Is that really true? Is it really true that I'm smart but not smart enough? Do I have evidence to prove that? And so once we can pull all these critical voices off the itty bitty shitty committee bus, we can start putting in some more powerful, encouraging, coach like people. So moving from the critical people to the coach like people. And so, what I like to do when that nagging thought comes up is I just imagine a stop sign. It just literally pops up in my head. And the great thing about that is it changes the state right away, the state that we're in. Because if we don't change the state, we can spiral from, "I'm not smart enough, I'm stupid, I can't get anything right, everything I do doesn't turn out, my life is a mess, blah, 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 blah." Okay. So we want to just immediately just stop that thought the minute we hear it. And that means that we need to be aware of it. And so that's the biggest strategy I have for you today. Become aware. Notice that thought coming into your mind and just imagine that stop sign coming up. Literally see that stop sign in your mind's eye. And then acknowledge the thought because we don't want to suppress it. Acknowledge the thought and just put it on the bus and just drive it away. Just drive it all the way out. And that's a really great way to conquer that inner voice. So if anyone wants to put in the chat, if they happen to be aware of an inner voice that comes up for them, some kind of a message that critical voice gives them. If you want to put it in the chat, just because if you're having it, chances are other people are having the same one. So go ahead and put that in the chat if you can think of it in this moment. And later on at the end of the call, we're going to be doing a hypnotic meditation. And that's going to, yeah, thanks, Jen. You're not ready. Yeah. Irresponsible. Yeah. Thanks, Robin. Yeah. Not disciplined enough. Yes, that's right, Elizabeth. Yeah, got that. And so you're going to have an opportunity. We're all going to have an opportunity at the end of the call when I do the healing hypnotic meditation to just switch some of those negative, less empowering. You have to do more than others. Yeah, I know. That's a common one. I got that too, Julie. So at the end of the call, we'll do the meditation and we will bring in some powerful, powerful affirmations and Julie's going to talk more about how great affirmations are, but we have that to look forward to at the end of the call. So yeah, Julie, if you want to jump on and just talk a little bit about the next strategy that you have.
So in my years in my own life, and then also in my client's life, I think this is probably the most powerful thing for us to do on the self-loving, self-healing, self-evolving, reaching a higher state of consciousness journey. Like when it really, when we kind of boil it down, the voice inside our head is the thing that's with us for 24 hours. It follows us everywhere we go. And what we tell ourselves has huge power over us, whether it's negative or positive power. It works both ways. And so for me, this has been a huge thing in my life because I realized, and I wrote about this in my book, but I realized that I was living with such a fear-based negativity. Like fear was yes, I put in there, you have to do more than others. That was fed to me by someone close to me in my life, my whole life, especially more than your siblings. But the other thing was living in fear. And living in fear of the what ifs, living in fear if my kids are going to be okay, living in fear of sometimes it shows up in success, sometimes it shows up in failure, living in fear of how will relationships change, living in fear of outgrowing people in your life. Like it was a constant kind of negative dialogue that I had. And I know that that is generational because I think my grandmother lived in fear. I know my mother lived in fear and really still does. So to me, this is the healthiest thing we can do is to become aware of the voice that is either our worst enemy or our best friend. And so one of the strategies that I do is when we really look at our beliefs. So the belief of not feeling enough, or the belief that I have to do more, or the belief that you're anticipating fear-based things. That's a belief. It really is a thought that you've had on repeat. And when you have a thought on repeat and going back from childhood, like Helen was saying, on the school bus, in the schoolyard, whether it was a grade on a test, what happens is it makes an imprint. And so then you start thinking, I have to do better. I have to do better. I'm not doing enough. I'm not doing enough. I'm not doing enough. And you keep repeating that thought. So then the belief becomes kind of impregnated in you that I have to do better constantly. I'm never quite doing enough. And even when that mark goes to a 70 or that mark goes to an 80, that belief is still there. Well, I could still do better because you have that thought, that original sort of word made an imprint, and then it's how you internalized it. That's where the damage is. It's actually not in what the person says, believe it or not, but it's in how you internalized it to be true about yourself. So I do something similar. I mean, I obviously do a lot of hypnotherapy on this in EFT, which are two ways that we can feed our subconscious mind different programs. And as we know, that's powerful when we're in a relaxed state. The subconscious mind has no bias. We need to remember that. So if I'm telling myself this thought on repeat, which becomes a belief, my subconscious mind believes it to be true. It believes it to be true. You need to live in fear. It believes it to be true that you're not enough. So when we get into that relaxed state and we start to feed a different program, your subconscious mind starts to believe that to be true. So I do something similar. I do that in EFT and hypnosis, but on a day-to-day basis, okay? Because you can't put yourself in hypnosis in the middle of a work meeting when you get that negative thought that comes up. I reject that. So similar to Helen's stop sign, it's I reject that thought. And so it gets you off the hook because we sometimes hate ourselves for thinking those things. But how do I stop the negative thought? Like, I don't know how to stop the negative thought. So when I say I reject that, I stop it in its tracks. I don't finish it, if that makes sense. And then I will replace it with a positive affirmation or the opposite. So you're not enough. Yes, you would replace that to I'm more than enough. And every time that thought gets replaced or the rejection or the stop sign stops it in its tracks and the new thought comes up, that new thought now has a chance to become the most predominant thought. And when that new thought becomes the most predominant thought, your believability starts to go up about that being true. Because every time you stop or reject and have that new thought, you start to rewire that brain slowly. And then the more you're kind of tricking the subconscious mind in a way, because you're literally telling it the opposite. But the reason why I want to say this affirmations alone, people say, I've been doing affirmations my whole life, they don't work. It's because is that affirmation the most predominant thought? Have you tipped your scale of believability on it? Because if you're saying, I'm great, I'm worthy, but 90% of the other thoughts in the day are pulling you out of that truth or pulling you, then of course the affirmation cannot work. It cannot have any weight in your reality. So that's why, yes, affirmations, I'm a big believer in it, but you have to think of it like I'm reprogramming my computer system. So is the affirmation enough? If I'm saying 90 negatives and one positive affirmation, the affirmation cannot work. So rejecting the thought, stopping it in its tracks, rewiring the brain with the new thought. And when you keep doing that, your scale of believability tips. And then you actually start to trick the subconscious mind in believing I'm beautiful, I'm worthy. And I don't mean trick. I mean, you really are, but you're tricking it in the sense that all those years you believed another reality to be true. Does that make sense? It was a little
Yeah.
long-winded
Yeah,
description.
absolutely. And I think, what you're talking about, Julie, there is balance, right? So if we're having, 98 negative thoughts and only two positive, then the balance is skewed. But over time, the more we work on it, the more we kind of come to a place of balance.
You tip the
And
scale the other way.
pardon?
You start to tip the scale the other way.
Exactly, exactly. And that's what it's all about. It does take work, it does take effort, but it's worth it. And you said something also that struck me that sometimes when we are catch ourselves doing this, we can hate ourselves. And I think it's really important to bring this feeling of non-judgment when we become aware of these thoughts and just have compassion for ourselves. And I think, Jen, you can talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, self-compassion. I do a lot of parts work for this. So if you research Tara Brach, Tara Brach, she does something called RAIN. And that's an acronym. And the R stands for recognize. So recognizing that part or that feeling that comes up in you. And the A is for allow, allowing it to be there, not trying to push it, beneath the surface. Even if you start with just like a minute and then build yourself up to 5 minutes. So allowing that feeling to be there. The I, investigating. Why is that part showing up for you? And then the N is nurture yourself. So going back to the I, investigate why that part's showing up for you. So there's it parts work is a belief that we're made up of many parts. You might have had parents that fought when you were growing up, and a way that you dealt with that perhaps was developing a part that minimized things, and that made it more livable for you. And that part served you well as a child, but it might not serve you into your adulthood. So if you're continuing to minimize things, or if you had a part that became quite critical of yourself, because if you were critical of yourself, then you felt like you were ahead of it. Like, you better do well in that math test, Jen. You better study really hard. You better get an 80. You feel like you have some control over the matter. And when we feel like we have more control, we trick ourselves into thinking that we're safer. So whatever part is showing up, investigating why it's there. So if it's an anxiety part, okay, I see you. I know why you're here. you can stay, but you're going to sit in the passenger seat and I'm going to drive. So recognizing the part, allowing it to be there, not kicking it to the curb, because we don't have any bad parts. They all want the best for us. Sometimes they just go about it the wrong way. But when we name it, I see you anxiety, we're taking away its power. And then when we say you can stay, but you're going to sit in the passenger seat, we're saying it's okay that you're here. I know why you're here, but I need to be in control of this. And when we do that, we begin to have more self-compassion for our parts when they show up for us, instead of getting angry that these parts are showing up or feeling bad about ourselves because these parts are showing up. So I think this is a really lovely way to have self-compassion when these things happen. Another thing I do is I add a but or a ladder to a sentence. So for example, I'm really anxious about going to this place, but I'm working on my anxiety. Or the idea of a ladder is you might have a negative sentence, but making sure you put a positive on the end of it so that you're reframing it in a way that makes you feel better. So I'm not happy right now, but I know that everything is working out for me behind the scenes. Things are getting better and better every day. So allowing that positive to be on the end of the sentence reframes things for your brain and allows you to think in a more positive manner, which allows you to have more self-compassion for the situation and for yourself when it's happening. And then another thing I do is I say, when did I decide that for myself? You know, when is the day that I proclaimed, you're not ready yet? When is the day that I proclaimed, you're not pretty enough? You know, and reminding ourselves that we don't need to carry someone else's beliefs or thoughts or statements. And we don't need to own other people's narrative, right? It's what we believe is more important. And so recognizing just because we have a thought doesn't make it true, and we don't need to own it, and we don't need to proclaim it, because we have 60,000 thoughts per day. 10% of them are true. So most of the time we're just perpetuating rumors about ourselves in our head. So reminding ourselves, just because I have a thought doesn't make it true. This is just a part. I can have compassion for this part and know why it's showing up.
Yeah, I love that. And you touched on anxiety. So that's perfect segue, because Robin's going to talk a little bit about anxiety, and she has a great story to share with us.
Thanks, Helen. I like to think about our patterns, because our patterns develop when we have unhealed parts of ourselves. And a good example would be being late. When we're late for something, our brain drives thoughts at 100 miles an hour. And we can go into anxiety sometimes anger. But anytime we start climbing up the ladder, maybe I'm an 8 out of 10, maybe I'm a 9 out of 10, maybe I'm a 10 out of 10 in anger or anxiety, that means that it is one of our major core beliefs under there that we're reacting off of. So the higher we are in the scale tells me that it is a big, big old hurt and an old bell ringing from way beyond. So if I work at the hospital sometimes, and I drive up to the parking gate, and there's a great big green button there, and I start at 8 o'clock, and it's about 4 minutes to. And in front of me, there's this lovely Mrs. Old Lady, who I usually have a lot of compassion for, but she can't find the great big green button. And she's taking her time, and she's taking her time, and she's taking her time. And I'm looking at the clock thinking, 3 minutes to, not even at my desk, 2 minutes to, 1 minute to, come on, lady. And finally, she hits the green button, the gate opens, and she drives her car through at 20 kilometers an hour. And now I'm sweating. So sometimes when we start climbing up that ladder, it comes with a physical reaction. We'll have sweat. Our heart might race, we might feel kind of sick. Then I know, we say in hypnosis, the issue is never the issue. It isn't the fact that I'm late. It is the fact that it is ringing an old bell for me under there. And my thought patterns go like this. Oh my God, I'm going to be late. My boss is going to see. My colleagues will see. They're going to say something. They're going to think I'm irresponsible. They're going to think I'm an irresponsible therapist. I'm not good enough to be a therapist. I'm irresponsible and I'm not smart enough to be a therapist. So these go right down into those old unhealed parts of ourself that Jen was talking about, those unhealed parts. And anytime we start climbing up to a 10, there's something big and unhealed. So I find it fascinating because the word irresponsible to me is my word. It's an old word. It comes from my dad. I know exactly where it comes from, but it comes up every time I forget my wallet. Every time I do a crappy job parking the car, I go into irresponsible. Well, that's irresponsible. I'm just going to leave the car there like that. So I know these are my patterns, but we get more and more power over our patterns and our thought beliefs if we can look at every time we spin. And in the spin, there's not a lot you can do because language doesn't need the spin. We can remove ourselves. We can use this technique, bilateral stimulation, right across the eyes to bring ourselves down, but there's not a lot we can do if we're starting to spin into anxiety or anger. Once we start hitting 7, 8, 9, and 10 in anger, language doesn't meet that. But I know that's a big part under me reacting. And I find once I recognize that, I react less and less and less. I don't get to a 10 now. I might get to a 7. I might get to a 6. But I can see it coming and I know it's not the old lady in front of me. It's because I went into not good enough. Most of our core beliefs funnel down. I'm not smart enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not enough. All funnel down into not enough. So every time we spin out of control, I know there's a pattern there and an old bell. So I have to remove myself from the situation. I have to stop the train, get off the train, because I know the issue is never the issue. And I can see these patterns pop up and they're all look different, but they all go down to irresponsible, not smart enough, the same old junk from my childhood.
It's so interesting to me how everyone can relate to this. We've all got that voice. And I agree with you. The more that I work on it, I find I don't get myself up to the 10. It's just really being the observer, right? Just watching, oh, here it comes again. I know what that's about. And just, you get off the train. I take it off the bus, but whatever transportation we use, some people like to put it on a cloud and just let it drift away. But it's just catching yourself and changing your state. It's so, so powerful. What I'm do now is just guide you, silence that inner critic that we've been talking about, and just to reach a place where you feel more empowered. Because rather than having your energy sucked out and drained out, which is what the inner critic does, we're going to start putting in some positive affirmations that are actually going to do the opposite. They're going to empower you and give you that energy that you're looking for. So let's get started. Just get comfortable in your seat there and just take a deep breath in and close your eyes as you exhale. And we'll just take a few more breaths just to center ourselves, breathing in from the nose for 5 and out through the nose for 5. Just at your own pace. Breathing in, beautiful light, white light, powerful positive light, and exhaling any negativity, any negative emotions. That's it. Now, what I'd like you to do now is just imagine yourself. Let me imagine yourself now in a mystical, magical place. Just take yourself there to that mystical, magical place where you feel so good, so happy, so comfortable. Just imagine, only imagine now, finding yourself in that mystical, magical place. And become aware of any tension or unease. Just do a body scan from the top of your head all the way down to the tips of your toes, and become aware of any tension or unease. Just notice the sensations in your body and soften those areas. Just give those areas some compassion and allow them to soften, loosen, and just let go now. And what I'd like you to do now is identify the critical voice that may be lingering in your mind, casting any doubt or negativity. And visualize this critical voice. Just imagine now, just pretend this critical voice, just imagine and visualize the critical voice as a cloud above you. And see it slowly drifting away, floating away, carried by the gentle breeze. And just imagine, only imagine now, watching it as it dissipates, leaving behind a clear and serene sky. Just go be there now, under that clear, serene sky. Just feel what it feels like to be under that clear and serene sky. What I'd like you to do now is replace this critical voice with empowering affirmations. Just imagine now a fountain of golden light bubbling up from within. Just from within your body, feel the sensation of that fountain of golden light bubbling up from within. Just imagine it. Just imagine a fountain of golden light bubbling up from within. And this light represents your inner strength, your wisdom, and self-love. Your inner strength, wisdom, and self-love. This light represents your inner strength, your wisdom, and your self-love. And with each breath you take, allow this golden light to expand throughout your entire being. Just allow it to expand, this golden light growing wider and wider throughout your entire being, illuminating every part of you, every nook and cranny, every cell, every fiber, every muscle, allowing this golden light to expand. And feel what it feels like now to feel its warmth and positive energy, replacing any remnants of negativity or self-doubt. Just let go of any negativity or self-doubt and allow this positive energy to replace it. Just feel what it feels like to just let go of any negativity or self-doubt now. And in a moment, I'm going to give you some positive statements and ask you to repeat after me. You can choose to repeat these affirmations either out loud or silently in your head, depending on what feels best for you. And you'll know what feels best for you. The effectiveness of affirmations lies in the intention and belief behind them. So it's important to go with the method that feels most natural to you. Affirmations change the story you tell yourself. After all, it's just a story, and stories can be changed. Your inner critic can become your encouraging coach. And remember, positive affirmations can offset the negative, bringing in more positive affirmations, offsetting the negative, and allowing those positive affirmations to permeate every part of your body, letting go of the negative. Let's begin. I am worthy of love and acceptance. Repeat after me. I am worthy of love and acceptance. One more time. I am worthy of love and acceptance. I trust in my abilities and decisions. I trust in my abilities and decisions. I trust in my abilities and decisions. I release self-criticism and embrace self-empowerment. I release self-criticism and embrace self-empowerment. I release self-criticism and embrace self-empowerment. My inner strength is limitless. My inner strength is limitless. My inner strength is limitless. As you repeat these affirmations, visualize them being etched in your mind, creating a new narrative that supports and uplifts you. Imagine yourself now, only imagine for a moment. Just picture it in your mind's eye. Imagine standing tall. Imagine yourself standing tall, confident, and empowered in your mystical place, in your magical place. Just see yourself in your mind's eye, standing so tall, so confident, so empowered. And feel the strength of your inner self as you embrace the positive energy surrounding you. Feel that strength of your inner self. Embrace the positive energy surrounding you. Just imagine, only imagine now what it feels like to feel that strength of your inner self as you embrace the positive energy surrounding you. Now go ahead and take a moment to bask in this newfound empowerment. Allow those positive affirmations to resonate within you, knowing that you have the ability to quiet the inner critic. You do have the ability to quiet the inner critic. You can quiet that inner critic. And you have the ability to nurture your inner strength. You can nurture your inner strength. You have the ability to nurture that inner strength. And when you're ready, and only when you're ready and have completely embraced these affirmations, taken in the newfound knowledge, when you're ready, gently bring your awareness back to the present moment. Take your time. And when you're ready, open your eyes and carry this sense of empowerment with you as you navigate the day.
That was great.
That's
Thank
wonderful.
you. Yeah, and just remember, as we said, to tweak the affirmations so that they're meaningful for you, and just simply take the critical voice and flip it. It's like a switch. Just flip it to the positive. It actually can be very simple. It just being aware of it. Become aware of it. Write it down if you have to. Flip the switch. It's so easy, and it can make all the difference in the world, allowing you to just take on all of these challenges that maybe in the past you wouldn't have because of that critical voice. And I think that's what it's all about. You know, we're here to learn and grow. I believe that's what our purpose is in this earth school, learn and grow. And the only way to do that is to just face the fear that that critical voice is bringing up, and bringing up that stop sign or that I reject it, and flip the switch to something more positive. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you all for joining me and the Hypnosis Healers. It's been a lot of fun, and we will see you on the next call.
Have a fabulous day, everybody.
I've got hearts.